Pinocchio is the latest in the string of live-action remakes from Disney that are adapted from their animation counterparts. This one has been released on Disney Plus, so it is streaming now on Disney Plus, and is directed by Robert Zemeckis and stars Tom Hanks as Geppetto, Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the voice of Jiminy Cricket, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth as the voice of Pinocchio. Pinocchio, as I said, is a live-action and CGI retelling of the beloved tale of a wooden puppet who embarks on a thrilling adventure to become a real boy. Other characters include Geppetto, the woodcarver who builds and treats Pinocchio as if he were his real son, Jiminy Cricket, who serves as Pinocchio's guide as well as his conscience, the Blue Fairy, Honest John, Sophia the Seagull, and the Coachman. I'm someone who is somewhat defensive of these Disney live-action remakes. Are they unnecessary? Yeah. Are they giant cash grabs, or in the case of they're released on Disney Plus, viewership grabs? Of course they fucking are. They're not necessary at all. Like, we don't need new versions of these movies, but that's what we're getting. We're getting new versions of these movies, and I think everybody goes into these live-action remakes with the mindset that these live-action remakes are erasing what came before. Like, for instance, when people went to go see Aladdin. I feel as if people went to go see Aladdin as if, oh, this is Disney treating this like it's the new thing. Like, this is the only version of Aladdin. Like, forget that the animated version existed. No, that's not what they're doing. Even if you don't like these movies, you still have the original animated counterpart to fall back on. If you don't like these movies, it doesn't tarnish the original at all. Even if these movies don't capture the magic and the feeling of wonderment that the animation might for you. For me, with these movies, yes, they are unnecessary, but I've always wondered, even from a young age while watching these movies, what these movies would be like if they were live action. And now that they are starting to make a lot of these Disney classics live action, it's really interesting to me to see what the differences are going to be, what some additions are going to be, what some subtractions are going to be. And in the case of most of these Disney live action movies, there is enough to differentiate the animation counterpart and the live action remakes from each other. And yes, obviously I like all the animated versions of these movies more than the live action remakes, but that doesn't mean I have to dislike the live action remakes. I've mostly been on Disney's side with these. As long as there is enough to differentiate them from those animated counterparts, I'm fine. In the case of Aladdin, there was enough in Aladdin that allowed me to like that version of Aladdin and still love the original animated version of Aladdin. I prefer the animated version of Aladdin, but I don't hate myself watching the live-action remake of Aladdin. I love that they gave Jasmine a bigger role and a couple of new songs. I like that they changed up the ending a little bit. Iago becomes a big bird instead of Jafar becoming the big giant snake that he did in the original animated movie. I like that they gave Genie a human form and that there were some added characters in there with Jasmine's handmaiden. Things like that. As long as you have about 20% to 25% of original material or changes made to them, I'm on board with them. And for the most part, these movies have done that. The Lion King might be the only exception where I said, that's really just a shot-for-shot remake without too much to differentiate it. I still find some enjoyment in The Lion King, not too much. It's one of the weaker ones for sure. In the case of Pinocchio, I think they actually lost me here. Man, oh man, Pinocchio was a snooze fest. It's essentially the same movie. Little to no differences, and it's really, really poorly handled. This is a bore fest. The first 30 minutes or so felt like how people feel like when you're watching Fellowship of the Ring or the first Hobbit movie where it says, all right, come on, let's get out of the Shire or let's get out of Bilbo's house. Kind of felt like that for me because we're just stuck in Geppetto's house for the first 30 minutes of the movie. Even once we get out of Geppetto's house, the journey that we go on with Pinocchio doesn't have that feeling of amazement, wonderment, or magic that the original Pinocchio had. It is a shot-for-shot remake. And that is my biggest fear with some of these Disney remakes. Like I said, you can have shot-for-shot remakes of certain scenes, but then later on in the movie change some things up to help update it for a modern audience. Pinocchio doesn't really do that. They might shift some things around, like some characters might be in some scenes in this movie that they weren't in the original animation, but it's essentially the same thing. Robert Zemeckis has made some classic movies, like Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, Castaway is really good. I'm a big fan of his animated movies like The Polar Express. But here, his direction just feels very lackadaisical. It feels very tepid. It doesn't feel like it has any energy put into it until you get to the Pleasure Island sequence, which I thought was the best sequence in the entire movie. That's when the movie brightened up a little bit. It felt like it came to life. There was that sense of wonderment and magic. That was the sequence to me where that had the most changes from the original Pinocchio. And that was the sequence that I appreciated the most. 85 to 90% of this movie is the same exact thing. And it's so soulless and joyless. And there's no emotional attachment to Pinocchio or Geppetto or any of these characters. There's even something weird that happens at the beginning of this movie. I can't remember if it happened at the beginning of the original Pinocchio animation, but Jiminy Cricket obviously serves as the narrator and Pinocchio's conscience. But then, as he's narrating the movie at the beginning of this movie, you hear his voice again off screen, and the Jiminy Cricket that's on screen is talking to the Jiminy Cricket narrating the movie off screen. That was completely jarring, and it only happens once, and I don't understand why they did that. Zemeckis co-wrote the script with Chris Weitz, and they took little to no time to actually develop Geppetto, Jiminy Cricket, Gideon, Pinocchio, any of the original characters that appeared in the original animation. That every sequence where Pinocchio goes to a new place just feels like, yep, well, we're going to be here for like 30 seconds. There's no point in even developing this any further. The Blue Fairy, played magnificently by Cynthia Erivo, is in like 30 seconds of the movie, and she's an integral part of the plot. She has more scenes in the original animation than she does in here. It's almost like they treated certain things that work so well in the original animation as an afterthought and took everything that probably should have been changed up a little bit, except for that Pleasure Island sequence, and just left it in the movie. I really don't know what Disney, Robert Zemeckis were thinking with this, but this is one of Zemeckis' weakest directorial efforts. And it's one of his weakest co-writing or writing efforts as well. Because he and Chris Weitz breeze so quickly and swiftly over any character developments or any scene setups, the trials Pinocchio faces feel inconsequential. They left me as a viewer with no sympathy for Pinocchio and me not really caring all that much. I guess that is part of the problem with these Disney live action movies for a lot of people, is that they don't capture a lot of those feelings with the characters that the animated counterparts did. I think most of these have for me. But here with Pinocchio, it just falls super flat. Tom Hanks as Geppetto. Let's talk about Tom Hanks as Geppetto. This is probably the strangest performance I've seen from Tom Hanks. He was really on and off. I love Tom Hanks. He's one of the greatest actors ever. He's America's dad, for Christ's sake. There were moments where I said he's really nailing it as Geppetto, and then there were other moments where he's talking like his normal Tom Hanks voice, and I said, oh, that's just Tom Hanks, or as I know him, Woody the Cowboy Doll from Toy Story. And it's weird because how it feels to me is that Zemeckis made it feel like it had to be Tom Hanks playing Geppetto, and it didn't have to be Tom Hanks. This could have been anybody playing Geppetto. I think anybody other than Tom Hanks could have played Geppetto a lot better. And like I said, I love Tom Hanks. He's a great actor. Just didn't work for me in this movie. Very on and off. A strange performance. Other than the Pleasure Island sequence offering enough differentiation in that sequence from the original animated counterpart, Pinocchio is essentially just a copy and paste remake of that animated classic. It's got some great voice acting with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Keegan-Michael Key, some other characters that are new that I actually did really like, but this entire journey that Pinocchio goes on, it feels inconsequential to the point where this honestly moves at a pace that is so much slower and comes across as a giant snooze fest. This is by far my least favorite of the Disney live action remakes. It's the worst one that they made so far. I'm gonna say I enjoyed Pinocchio with stale popcorn. So if you have seen the live-action remake of Pinocchio, I want to know your thoughts. Drop me a comment in the comment section below. I'll leave my link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.